My husband laughed and said, "What are you going to do? Divorce me after I caught him with my own sister?" I did not say a word, just walked to the bedroom and started packing. They stopped laughing when they saw what I was putting in the suitcase. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I would love to know which city you are joining us from. Please feel free to share in the comments. Now, let me take you into this story. The day had been utterly, painfully normal. I remember leaving the office around 5, feeling that familiar sense of satisfaction that comes from a productive week. I am a partner at an architecture firm I helped build from the ground up. I remember walking to my car, thinking about the generous salary I had worked so hard to secure, the kind of salary that allowed me to provide a beautiful life for my family. We had just finalized a massive commercial project, and the firm was celebrating. And while the hours can be long, I love the work. There is a solidity to it, a permanence in creating spaces where people will live their lives. It is a feeling of control, I suppose, a feeling that I was an architect of my own life, too. I stopped at the gourmet market on the way home to pick up fresh pasta and a bottle of Chianti. The market was bustling with people picking out Friday night dinners. I took my time selecting the perfect, ripest tomatoes for the sauce, chatting lightly with the cashier about the weather. It all felt so safe. Warren loved it when I made my bolognese from scratch. It was a small thing, but after 25 years of marriage, you learn that love often lives in the small things. It lives in knowing their favorite wine, in making their favorite meal on a Thursday just because. Our house was my sanctuary. A beautiful 2-story colonial I designed myself years ago, nestled in a quiet, leafy suburb. Every detail, from the reclaimed oak floors to the Carrara marble in the kitchen, was something I had chosen with care. It was more than a house. It was a testament to the life I thought I had built. Solid, permanent. When I got home, Warren was already there in the living room, ostensibly reading the paper, but I could see his phone propped up behind it. "Hey, you," I said, dropping my keys and the grocery bags on the hall table. "Smells like you showered." "Long day," he said, folding the paper with a rustle. "Thought I would wash it off." He came over and gave me a perfunctory kiss on the cheek. It was routine, practiced, the kind of kiss that does not mean anything except habit. I did not think much of it. We made dinner together, or rather, I cooked while he leaned against the counter and told me about his day. His boss was a jerk. The quarterly reports were a nightmare. The usual complaints. I listened, offered sympathetic noises, and chopped onions. It was the familiar dance of our evenings, a choreography we had perfected over 2.5 decades. After dinner, we settled onto the couch in the living room. It was a plush custom-made sectional in a soft gray fabric that had taken me 6 months to choose. I remember thinking about that, the absurd amount of time I had spent on paint swatches and fabric samples, all to create this perfect, peaceful home. The gas fireplace was on just for the ambience, its soft orange light flickering across the framed photos on the mantelpiece. Photos of our wedding, him looking so handsome and nervous in his tux. Photos of family vacations to the Grand Canyon. Our faces windburned and smiling. Photos of my younger sister Nadine's college graduation. Me and Warren standing on either side of her, beaming with pride. A whole life captured in polished silver frames. I was 52, an age where you believe the foundation of your life is set in stone. You have weathered the storms. You have raised your hypothetical children. You have settled into the comfortable, predictable rhythm of a long marriage. You think you know the person sitting next to you better than you know the back of your own hand. I picked up a design magazine and Warren was on his phone. He was supposed to be looking up reviews for a new French restaurant to celebrate our anniversary. 25 years, a quarter of a century. It felt monumental, a milestone that deserved champagne and celebration. But he was not looking at restaurants. His phone buzzed, a low discreet vibration from inside his pocket. He pulled it out and his movements were just a little too quick, a little too guarded. He angled the screen away from me, a subtle shift of his body that screamed secrecy. It was a small thing, a tiny crack in the placid surface of our evening, but my architect's eye for detail, for things that are misaligned, caught it immediately. Then he smiled. It was not his usual smile. It was not the tired end of the day smile he gave me or the polite thin-lipped smile for the neighbors. This was a secret smile, a private lit from within smile that made his eyes crinkle at the corners. My breath caught in my throat. It was the one he used to give me when we were first dating. Back when a simple text from me could make him light up from across a crowded room. Seeing that smile now directed at a cold glowing screen, it felt like a physical blow, a punch to the gut that left me winded. Another buzz, more smiling. He started typing with both thumbs, his brow furrowed in concentration, completely and utterly absorbed. The world outside of that little rectangle of light, the crackling fire, the soft music playing, his wife of 25 years sitting 3 feet away, had ceased to exist for him. "Find anything good?" I asked, my voice sounding strained and artificially bright to my own ears. He jumped, startled, as if he had forgotten I was even in the room. He quickly locked his phone and set it face down on the cushion between us. "Oh, yeah, just an old buddy from college, Mark, sent a funny meme about his kid." Something felt profoundly wrong. A cold knot started to form in my stomach. Warren's college friends were my friends, too. Mark always sent funny things to our old group chat, not to Warren personally in the middle of the night. But I let it go. You do not detonate a 25-year marriage over a text message. You tell yourself you are being paranoid, that it is your own insecurity talking. You tell yourself to trust him. So, I tried. I picked up my magazine, but the elegant blueprints and glossy photos just swam on the page. I could not concentrate. All I could see was that smile, that specific intimate smile that no longer belonged to me. I watched him out of the corner of my eye. This man I had shared a bed with for over 9,000 nights. And for the first time in our life together, he felt like a complete and utter stranger. The silence in the room grew heavy, pregnant with all the things that were not being said. The peaceful home I had designed to be my sanctuary suddenly felt like a stage set, fragile and fake. And I had the terrifying feeling that the curtain was about to come down. The knot in my stomach did not go away. It stayed there through the night, a cold, hard lump of dread that made sleep impossible. I lay in our bed, listening to the sound of Warren's even breathing beside me, and felt a chasm opening between us. Every time he shifted in his sleep, I flinched. I replayed the scene on the couch over and over in my head, analyzing every detail, every nuance, trying to convince myself I had imagined it, that I had overreacted. But the image of that smile was burned into my mind. The next day, Friday, I tried to bury myself in work. I went to the office. I sat in meetings about load-bearing walls and zoning variances. I reviewed architectural drafts and authorized payroll. I went through the motions of my normal structured life. But it was like watching a movie of someone else's day. The little voice in the back of my head kept whispering, kept replaying that secret smile. I told myself I was being ridiculous. I was a grown woman, a partner in a successful firm, not some hysterical, insecure teenager. But the feeling would not go away. That evening the fragile peace I had tried to reconstruct was shattered for good. The evening started with a tense, almost suffocating normalcy. I suggested we order takeout, not having the energy to cook. Warren readily agreed, maybe a little too quickly. He seemed eager to keep things simple to avoid any real conversation. We ate in front of the television watching some mindless sitcom. The sound of the canned laughter filling the space where our own conversation should have been. After dinner, I was in the kitchen rinsing the plates. Warren was leaning against the counter, scrolling through his phone again. The same posture, the same intense focus. I tried to ignore it. I told myself it did not mean anything. His phone buzzed. A loud, clear notification sound. This time he had left the volume on. He set it face down on the granite countertop, the screen dark, and said, "I am going to grab that bottle of red from the pantry, the good stuff." He walked out of the kitchen. And in that moment, the universe or fate or whatever you want to call it, gave me a choice. I could respect his privacy. I could turn back to my bubbling sink of soapy water, dry the plates, and live with the gnawing corrosive uncertainty for the rest of my life. Or I could know. I stood there for a long 10 seconds, my heart hammering against my ribs. I could hear him rustling around in the pantry, humming a little tune. The sound was so normal, so domestic, it made the situation feel even more surreal. Just turn it over, Vera, the voice in my head urged. You have to know. My hand trembled as I reached for the phone. It felt heavy in my hand, like it contained the weight of my entire future. The glass was cool and smooth against my skin. I took a deep shuddering breath and flipped it over. The screen lit up, and there it was, a notification preview from a text message, clear as day. My brain registered the words before it could process the horror. Cannot stop thinking about last night. You were amazing. For a split second, my mind reeled, trying to make sense of it. An affair. He was having an affair. The pain was sharp, immediate, a white-hot poker to the chest. But it was the name below the message that made the world stop spinning. The name that turned the sharp pain into a soul-crushing implosion that vaporized everything I thought I knew. It was not a name I did not know. It was not some stranger, some coworker, some random woman I could hate from a distance. The name was Nadine, my sister, my baby sister, the little girl whose scraped knees I had bandaged, the awkward teenager I had coached through her first date, the maid of honor at my wedding who had given a tearful speech about how I was her hero. The woman whose photo was on my mantelpiece, smiling her bright, beautiful smile right next to mine. I could not breathe. The air was sucked out of my lungs as if by a vacuum. The sound of the running water in the sink faded into a dull, distant roar in my ears. I stared at the name, my sister's name, on my husband's phone next to those words, and my reality fractured into a million jagged pieces. It was not just a crack in the mirror anymore. The mirror had been smashed to dust, and the reflection staring back at me was a woman I no longer recognized, living a life that was a complete and utter lie. I heard the pantry door open. I heard Warren walking back towards me, the bottle of wine clinking against the corkscrew in his hand. He was still humming that little tune, completely and utterly oblivious. And I just stood there frozen, holding the evidence of their unimaginable betrayal in my hand, the heat from the phone burning like a brand against my palm. Time seemed to slow down to a thick, syrupy crawl. I could feel the cold of the granite countertop seeping into my fingertips where I gripped the edge for support, the only thing keeping me upright. Warren stopped humming when he saw my face. The casual smile dropped from his lips. Vera, what is it? You look like you have seen a ghost. I tried to speak, but no sound came out. My throat had closed up. I just turned the phone around, my hand shaking so violently the screen seemed to vibrate, and held it out for him to see. His eyes scanned the screen. I watched his face, desperately, searching for any sign of remorse, of panic, of shame. There was nothing. I saw a flicker of annoyance, quickly masked. He looked like a teenager who had been caught breaking curfew, not a man who had just dynamited his 25-year marriage. He let out a long theatrical sigh. Look, it is not what you think. The sheer, insulting weakness of that cliché, the most pathetic line in the cheater's handbook, finally broke my paralysis. Not what I think. My voice was a choked ragged whisper I barely recognized as my own. It says Nadine. My Nadine. And it says, you were amazing last night. Each word was a shard of glass I had to force out of my throat. He had the audacity to look bored, put upon. He gently took the phone from my trembling hand and slipped it into his pocket as if hiding the evidence would make it disappear. You are overreacting. You are being dramatic. Dramatic? I whispered. Just then, the back door clicked open. And in walked Nadine. She was carrying a bag from a local bakery. A bright, cheerful smile on her face. Hey. I was in the neighborhood and thought I would bring dessert. They have that lemon tart you love, Vera. She used my childhood nickname, and the sound of it on her lips now was a desecration. Her smile faltered as she took in the scene. She looked from my ashen face to Warren's tense posture, a quick calculating glance between the two of them. And in that single, fleeting glance, I saw everything. There was no surprise, no confusion, just recognition. She knew. Of course, she knew. She was not an innocent party caught in the crossfire. She was the other combatant. I looked at my little sister, the woman whose secrets I had kept, whose tears I had dried, whose life I had celebrated as if it were my own. Nadine, I whispered, the name tasting like ash and poison in my mouth. She did not even try to deny it. She leaned against the door frame, setting the bag with the tart on the floor. A slow, smug little smirk played on her lips. She looked at Warren and he looked at her, and a silent, triumphant conversation passed between them. And then it happened. The thing that broke me, the thing that killed the last shred of hope in my heart. Warren started to laugh. It was not a small, nervous chuckle. It was a full, deep-bellied laugh. A laugh of pure, unadulterated mockery, of relief that the secret was finally out. Nadine joined in, a high, tinkling laugh that sounded like breaking glass. They stood there in my kitchen, my husband and my sister, laughing at my pain, laughing at the utter destruction of my world. The sound echoed off my pristine marble countertops, a grotesque symphony of their shared betrayal. The blood drained from my face. I felt a strange, horrifying sense of detachment, as if I were floating near the ceiling, watching this obscene little play unfold below. The woman standing there, her face a mask of silent horror, could not possibly be me. Through his laughter, Warren finally managed to speak, wiping a tear of mirth from the corner of his eye. The words he said will be burned into my memory, seared onto my soul, until the day I die. Oh, come on, Vera. He gasped, still chuckling. It is not that serious. What are you going to do? Divorce me? And in that moment, with their cruel laughter ringing in my ears, something inside me did not just break. It died. The loving wife, the trusting sister, the woman who built her life around these two people, she ceased to exist. She turned to dust and blew away. And in her place, something cold and hard and silent began to form like a diamond under unimaginable pressure. I did not scream. I did not cry. I did not throw the heavy cast iron skillet at his head, though the image flashed through my mind with vivid clarity. I just stood there, a hollowed-out shell. The laughter eventually died down, sputtering out into awkward silence when they realized I was not reacting. They looked at me a little confused now, their shared amusement giving way to a flicker of uneasy uncertainty. Vera, say something, Warren said, his tone still light but with an underlying edge of command. He was used to me reacting to us talking things through. My silence was a variable he had not accounted for. I did not. I turned my back on them, a simple, deliberate movement. I walked out of the kitchen through the dining room with the long mahogany table where we had hosted so many family Thanksgivings and started up the grand curving staircase. Each step on the plush runner felt heavy, monumental. I could hear them following me, their footsteps hesitant on the hardwood floor below. Where are you going? We are talking about this, Warren called after me, a note of panic creeping into his voice. But we were not talking. They were laughing. I was done talking forever. I walked into our bedroom. Our bedroom. The place that had been my sanctuary. The king-sized bed with the ridiculously high thread count sheets. I had insisted on the matching walnut nightstands. The life we had built contained in these four walls. I went straight to the walk-in closet, a space I had designed to be organized and serene. On the top shelf, covered in a canvas dust bag, was a set of expensive hand-stitched Italian leather luggage. I had bought it for Warren for our 20th anniversary for that trip to Italy we had taken. He had loved it, bragging about it to anyone who would listen. I pulled down the largest suitcase. It was heavy, beautifully made, a symbol of our shared history, of our travels, of our life together. I laid it on the pristine white duvet of our bed and unzipped it with a firm, decisive pull. They were standing in the doorway now, watching me, their expressions a strange mix of apprehension and lingering arrogance. "What are you doing?" Nadine asked, her voice laced with a mocking curiosity. "Packing his bags for him? Kicking him out. A little dramatic, do you not think?" I ignored her. I walked over to my side of the closet. My clothes hung in neat, orderly rows, organized by color and season. My silk blouses, my work suits, the beautiful cocktail dress I wore for date nights that had apparently been a complete and utter lie. With a strange, detached calm, I began to take them off the hangers. One by one, I folded them carefully, my hands moving with an eerie precision, smoothing out the wrinkles, and placed them inside the suitcase. His suitcase. The dress I wore to my father's funeral. The sweater he gave me for Christmas 5 years ago. Each item was a memory, a piece of our shared story, and I was packing it all away. The silence in the room stretched, thick and suffocating. The only sound was the soft rustle of fabric, the quiet click of hangers. Their amusement was rapidly fading, replaced by a dawning, horrified understanding. Nadine was the first to finally process what she was seeing. Her voice was a sharp, disbelieving hiss. "Wait, are you packing your clothes in his suitcase?" I continued to pack. My favorite cashmere sweater, my comfortable jeans, my workout clothes, everything went in. I was a machine, methodical and silent. The cold, hard diamond of resolve inside me was in control now. It was directing my hands, my feet, my every move. They had wanted to see what I would do. I was going to show them, and I was not going to say a single solitary word while I did it. Their panic was now palpable, a frantic energy radiating from the doorway. "Vera, stop this. This is childish." "This is not funny," Warren said, his voice taking on a sharper, more commanding edge. The laughter was a distant memory replaced by the nervous bluster of a man who was realizing far too late that he had fundamentally miscalculated. He had assumed tears, arguments, maybe a plate thrown against a wall. He had not anticipated this cold, silent, methodical dismantling of their life. I ignored him. After packing my essential clothes, I walked into the expansive master bathroom. I grabbed my toiletries from the marble vanity, my expensive face cream that he always complained about the cost of, my Chanel perfume he bought me for my 50th birthday, my electric toothbrush. Everything went into a travel bag and then into the suitcase. They just stood there watching, two useless statues of flesh and blood. My silence was a wall of reinforced concrete they could not penetrate. I zipped up the large suitcase with a final, satisfying tug and set it on the floor. Then I went back into the closet and pulled down the matching leather carry-on. The beautiful bag we had used for weekend trips to the wine country. "Hello Earth to Vera. Are you seriously giving me the silent treatment?" Warren's voice was getting louder, bordering on a shout. "So I messed up. It is a big deal. I get it. But you do not just do this. You do not throw away a family." "Our family?" I thought as I started packing my shoes. "You torched our family and used the flames to keep you warm." I packed my laptop, my work files, the antique silver picture frame from my desk that held a photo of my parents. As I packed, I sat on the edge of our bed, the bed where I had slept trustingly beside a liar for who knows how long, and pulled out my phone. My fingers were surprisingly steady. Warren and Nadine exchanged a nervous glance. "What are you doing on your phone now?" Nadine asked, her voice shrill. I opened my banking app. It was a blessing, really, a stroke of karmic justice that I had always been the one who handled our finances. I was the architect, the planner, the one who managed the investments and paid the bills. The house was in my name. I had made the down payment with a small inheritance from my grandmother. Most of our assets, the cars, the brokerage account, the emergency fund were all tied to my accounts, my salary. I scrolled to the list of authorized users on my Amex Platinum card. There was his name, Warren. I remember how thrilled he was when I added him, how he had flashed the heavy metal card at his friends at the golf club. With a simple tap, a confirmation screen popped up. "Are you sure you want to remove this user?" the app asked. I pressed confirm without a second's hesitation. A small digital guillotine. Next, the car insurance. The policy for the Lexus he drove so proudly, the one he considered his car, was under my name as part of my multi-car discount plan. I found the number in my contacts and called, putting the phone on speaker. The cheerful tiny hold music, a generic smooth jazz tune, filled the tense silence of the room. Warren stared at the phone on my lap, his face pale and slack-jawed. "Thank you for calling Allstate. This is Maria. How can I help you?" "Hello, Maria," I said. My voice even and calm, a stranger's voice. "I would like to make a change to my policy. My policy number is 947. I gave her the details. "The Lexus and the primary driver to be removed, Warren." "Vera, you cannot do that," he sputtered, finally rushing forward. "I need that car for work for my clients." "Ma'am, the change will be effective immediately." The agent chirped on the other end, oblivious. "The vehicle and driver have been removed. Is there anything else I can help you with today?" "No, thank you, Maria. You have been very helpful," I said, and hung up. I looked up at him. His face was a mask of disbelief and impotent fury. You canceled my insurance." I did not answer. I just went back to my phone, opened the app for our mobile carrier, and with a few more taps, began the process of removing his line from my family plan. His phone would be disconnected by the next billing cycle. One by one, I was cutting the cords that tied him to my life and, more importantly, to my finances. I changed the password to our Amazon Prime account. I changed the password to Netflix. I logged into the smart home app and revoked his access to the security system. Small digital acts of eviction, and with each tap, I felt a piece of my power returning. The look on their faces was a grotesque mixture of panic and sputtering indignation. Nadine, who had been silently observing with a look of smug superiority, now looked genuinely frightened. The foundation of the comfortable, subsidized life she was trying to insert herself into is being demolished before her very eyes. "This is insane," Warren stammered, running a hand through his thinning hair. "You are throwing away 25 years of marriage over a few stupid texts." "A few stupid texts?" My voice was dangerously low, a growl that came from the depths of my shattered soul. It was the first time I had spoken directly to him in what felt like an eternity. The cold diamond of resolve inside me was now heating up, turning into a white-hot, focused rage. I held out my hand. "Give me your phone." "What?" "No," he said, clutching it protectively to his chest like a child with a toy. "Warren," I said, my voice leaving no room for argument or negotiation. "You can give it to me now, or I will consider that a full and complete confession, and my lawyer will subpoena it in the divorce proceedings. And trust me, it will look much, much worse for you then." "Your choice." I knew using those words would get his attention. It did. He hesitated, his jaw tight with fury, then practically threw the phone at me. It landed softly on the duvet. I picked it up. I unlocked it. The passcode was 1125. The birthday of our first dog, a goofy golden retriever named Sadie, who had died 10 years ago. He had not even bothered to change it. The intimacy of that knowledge, the shared secret of that number, now felt like a violation. I opened his messages with Nadine. It was not just a few texts. It was a novel, an epic of deceit. It went back months. I scrolled and scrolled, my heart turning to a block of ice in my chest. The sheer volume of their communication was staggering. Good morning texts. Good night texts. Flirtatious banter during the workday. Then there were the pictures. Pictures of my sister in lingerie I had never seen posing suggestively in what looked like a hotel room. pictures that made me physically ill. There were inside jokes, cruel nicknames for me, vile comments about my work, my friends, my body. They had built a whole secret world, and the foundation of that world was their shared contempt for me. Then I found it. The thread from last month. Warren had told me he was going on a business trip, a sales conference in Florida. I had helped him pack. I had driven him to the airport at 5 a.m. I had texted him every night telling him I missed him. It was all a lie. The messages laid it out in sickening pornographic detail. It was a romantic getaway with Nadine. She had flown down to meet him. They had stayed at the St. Regis, a 5-star luxury beach resort. And the worst part, the final soul-crushing blow. I found the email confirmation he had forwarded to her, the one with the final bill. It had been paid for with my American Express card, the one I had just cancelled. The trip had cost over $9,500. My hands were shaking now, not from weakness, but from pure unadulterated fury. I looked up from the screen, my eyes locking onto theirs. They both looked away, unable to meet my gaze. I decided to read one of the messages out loud, my voice dripping with venom. Nadine, does she suspect anything? Worried she will check the credit card statement. I paused, letting the words hang in the air like toxic smoke. Warren, not a clue. She is too busy managing her little empire to notice me. Besides, she thinks my promotion is coming through, so she will not question any expenses right now. She is predictable. My little empire, the business I had built from the ground up with sleepless nights and weekends sacrificed at the altar of its success. The business that paid for this house, for his Lexus, for his golf club membership, for their secret sordid vacation. The rage was so intense I felt like I might actually combust. You took my money, I said, my voice shaking with the effort of keeping it level to take my sister on a vacation while lying to my face about a promotion that was never even real. Warren had the nerve to look ashamed for a fleeting second. Nadine, however, just crossed her arms, her chin jutting out in defiance. He deserved a little fun, she said, her voice dripping with poison. You have been so wrapped up in your work for years. You barely pay attention to him anyway. What did you expect? That was it. The final unforgivable betrayal. Not just the affair, not just the theft, but the justification, the blame. In their twisted, selfish minds, this was somehow my fault. The last vestiges of love, of history, of family connection I had for either of them evaporated in that moment, replaced by nothing but a vast empty expanse of contempt. I felt a strange chilling clarity. The path forward, which had been a chaotic mess of pain and confusion moments before, was now illuminated by the harsh, bright fire of my anger. There was nothing left to salvage here, nothing left to say to these two monstrously selfish people. I closed his phone and tossed it onto the bed. Then I pulled up my own phone again for the last time in this house. My fingers flew across the screen, my movements sufficient and precise. What now? Warren asked, his voice weary, like he was speaking to a wild animal he was not sure would attack. Who are you calling now? My mother? I did not answer him. I dialed my best friend, Maxine. We had been friends since college, had seen each other through everything. She picked up on the second ring. Hey, Vera, what is up? Her cheerful, familiar voice came through the speaker, a lifeline from the sane world. Maxine, I said, and my voice finally broke just for a second. A single crack in the icy facade. Can I come and stay with you for a few days? I need to get out of here. The cheerfulness vanished from her voice, replaced by immediate urgent concern. Oh my God, of course. What happened? Are you okay? Where are you? I am at home, I said, looking directly at Warren as the words came out of my mouth. Warren has been cheating on me with Nadine. There was a stunned, horrified silence on the other end of the line. Then a string of curses that made me almost smile. That absolute bastard. That snake. Of course you can stay. Do not even ask. I am on my way to get you right now. No, I said quickly. Do not come here. I do not want you in this house with them. I am leaving now. I will take an Uber. Okay. Okay, honey. The spare room is always ready for you. You know that the door will be unlocked. Just get here safely. And Vera, you call me the second you are in that car. I will. Thank you, I whispered and hung up. Next, I opened the Uber app. I put in Maxine's address. The map showed a little car icon just a few blocks away. 5 minutes. The reality of the situation, the finality of it, finally seemed to crash down on them. This was not a temporary dramatic gesture. This was not a tantrum. I was leaving. I was really truly leaving. Wait, you cannot just leave. Nadine cried out, her defiance crumbling into a pathetic, childish whine. This is your house. Exactly, I said, my voice cold again. It is my house, which is why I am the one who gets to leave it. You two can stay here for now. Warren moved to block the doorway, planting his feet like a sentry. Vera, please. Let us just sit down and talk about this like adults. We can fix this. I know we can. We can go to counseling. Counseling? I let out a laugh, a bitter, humorless sound that was more like a bark. You think a 60-minute session with a therapist can fix this? You think we can talk our way back from this? There is nothing to fix. A marriage, a relationship, those are structures that can be repaired. But this is a toxic waste dump and I am evacuating. My phone buzzed. My Uber was outside. I grabbed the handles of the 2 heavy leather suitcases. They were filled with the curated pieces of the life I thought I had. A life that was now nothing but dead weight. I started rolling them towards the bedroom door. They both rushed forward, trying to stop me. Nadine grabbed at one of the suitcases, fumbling with the zipper. You are not going anywhere. We need to talk. Warren put his hands on my shoulders, his grip surprisingly strong. Vera, please do not do this. Think about what you are throwing away. I stopped. I looked down at his hands on my shoulders, the hands of a stranger. Then I looked up at his face, a face I no longer recognized. Then I glanced over at my sister, who was desperately trying to unpack my shoes as if that would somehow keep me there. I felt a wave of disgust so profound it almost made me gag. I shrugged his hands off me with a force that surprised even myself. I looked at both of them. These 2 people who had been the twin pillars of my universe, now just pathetic, selfish strangers standing in the wreckage they had created. You asked me what I was going to do, I said, my voice steady and clear and final. I am going to live without either of you. And with that, I rolled my suitcases past them, down the grand staircase, and out the heavy oak front door of my house for the very last time. I did not look back. I did not dare. The cool night air hit my face like a slap, shocking me back into my own body. The Uber, a clean black sedan, was waiting at the curb, its engine humming quietly. The driver, a kind-faced man with graying temples and a gentle smile, got out immediately when he saw me struggling with the heavy bags. Here, ma'am, let me get those for you, he said, his voice soft. He expertly lifted the suitcases and settled them into the trunk. He must have seen the look on my face, the tear tracks on my cheeks, the tremor in my hands because he did not ask any questions. He just opened the back door for me and gave me a simple, sympathetic nod. The moment I slid into the back seat and the door clicked shut, the adrenaline that had been coursing through my veins for the past hour vanished as if a switch had been flipped. It left behind a hollow, cavernous emptiness that was almost worse than the rage. The car pulled away from the curb, and I watched my beautiful home, the one with the perfectly manicured lawn and the welcoming gas lights I had had installed last year, recede in the darkness. My home, my sanctuary, and they were still in it. The thought was a physical violation. Then my phone, which I was still clutching in a white-knuckled grip, started to blow up. First, it was Warren. The screen lit up with his name and photo, a picture of us in Napa, smiling a lifetime ago. I stared at it, then pressed the red button to decline the call with a vicious jab of my thumb. A second later, a text message appeared. Vera, pick up the phone. This is insane. You are behaving like a child. I ignored it. Then Nadine. Her name popped up and a fresh wave of nausea and betrayal rolled over me. I declined her call, too. A string of texts followed. One after the other, a rapid-fire assault. You cannot do this to us. This is your family you are walking out on. You are destroying everything with your selfishness. I was destroying everything. The sheer, breathtaking audacity of it all was almost impressive. The phone kept buzzing, vibrating against my leg, a relentless electronic tether to the two people I now despised more than anyone on earth. It felt like they were trying to pull me back, to drag me back into the toxicity and the lies through that little glowing device. Warren called again. This time, a voicemail notification popped up. Then Nadine, then Warren again. I watched the screen light up with their names flashing in the dark car like warning signals. With 2 decisive taps, I found their contacts and I blocked them. The buzzing stopped. The silence in the car was suddenly deafening, broken only by the soft hum of the tires on the asphalt. And in that quiet, as the familiar street lights of my neighborhood blurred past the window, it finally hit me. The full crushing tectonic weight of it all. 25 years of marriage. 50 years of sisterhood gone. Vaporized in a single night of cruel laughter and breathtaking betrayal. I looked out the window at the blurry lights of other people's homes, other people's normal lives, and realized silent tears were streaming down my face again, the salt from them stinging the raw skin on my cheeks. I was not sobbing. It was a quiet, hopeless kind of weeping for a life that was now over, for a future that had been stolen from me. The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror, his expression full of concern. "Everything all right, ma'am?" he asked softly. I could not find my voice to answer, so I just nodded, a pathetic little jerk of my head. Then I whispered, mostly to myself, a promise to the broken woman reflected in the window. "It will be." And in the quiet of that car, with my whole world packed into a suitcase that was not even mine, I felt completely and utterly alone. But telling this story, sharing this with you, it makes me feel a little less alone. Gemini said the first night at Maxine's house was a blur of shock and sheer physical exhaustion. She met me at the front door before I could even ring the bell, wrapped me in a huge, fiercely protective hug, and did not let go for a full minute. She did not press me for details, did not ask 1,000 questions about what had happened in my kitchen. She just took the heavy suitcases from my trembling hands, guided me to her spare guest room, a cozy, safe space with pale yellow walls, and brought me a steaming cup of chamomile tea and a mild sedative. I changed into a pair of Maxine's oversized sweatpants and crawled under the heavy duvet. I think I slept, but it was a restless, dream-filled sleep haunted by the echoing sound of their laughter bouncing off my marble countertops. I woke up on Saturday morning feeling like I had been in a severe car crash. Every single muscle and joint in my body was aching, but the cold core of resolve inside me was still there. It had hardened overnight into something unbreakable, something sharp and dangerous. Maxine was my absolute rock. She sat with me at her rustic kitchen table, the morning sun streaming through the windows, while I stared blindly into a ceramic coffee cup. I finally found my voice and told her everything. Every sordid detail. When I was ready, she did not offer empty platitudes or tell me that time heals all wounds. She offered a battle plan. "Okay," she said, her voice firm and grounding. "What is the very first step?" "A lawyer," I said, my own voice surprising me with its sudden steadiness. "Not just any lawyer. The best, most ruthless divorce lawyer in the entire city." Maxine nodded, already pulling her silver laptop across the table and opening a search browser. "I know a guy. They call him the Shark. He handled my cousin's nasty divorce a few years back." By 9 o'clock on Monday morning, I was sitting in the sterile, overly air-conditioned office of Mr. Desmond, a man with a thick shock of white hair, piercing blue eyes, and a well-earned reputation for being a legal shark in a $3,000 tailored suit. I desperately needed a shark. The office was located on the 40th floor of a downtown high-rise, boasting a panoramic view of the very city skyline I had helped build and design. I felt a small, grim sense of irony looking out at those buildings. I told him everything. I laid my entire ruined life out on the polished surface of his massive mahogany desk. The 25-year marriage, the fact that I was the primary earner with extensive documentation and tax returns to prove my salary, the house being solely in my name, purchased years ago using a modest inheritance from my late grandmother. I explained the complex financial entanglement, the luxury cars, the joint brokerage accounts. Fortunately, we did not have any children, so there would be no agonizing battles over child custody or splitting a college fund. That was one small mercy in this nightmare. Then I told him about Warren and Nadine, and the horrific events of Thursday night. I had saved the sickening text messages from Warren's phone. I played him the chaotic voicemail messages they had started leaving on my blocked number over the weekend, a pathetic, chaotic mix of feigned remorse, angry accusations, and desperate pleading. Mr. Desmond listened patiently, his face a completely impassive mask, occasionally jotting down a sharp note on a yellow legal pad. He did not interrupt me once. When I finally finished speaking, my throat raw and aching from the effort, he took off his gold-rimmed glasses and polished them slowly with a square of silk cloth. "Well, Vera," he said, his voice calm, deep, and profoundly reassuring. "This is a massive mess. A heartbreaking, despicable mess. But from a strict legal standpoint, it is remarkably clean." He confirmed what I already suspected deep down. Since I was the sole owner on the property deed to the house, Warren and Nadine were, in legal terms, merely tenants at will with absolutely no formal lease agreement. They were my guests, and their invitation to stay in my home had been well and truly revoked. "We will begin the divorce proceedings immediately, citing adultery with extreme prejudice," he explained, his voice crisp and highly professional. "We will also file for an emergency court order to freeze all joint assets, though it sounds like there are very few of those left anyway. And most importantly, we will serve them with a formal, legally binding eviction notice today. They will have 30 days to vacate your property. If they refuse to leave at the end of that period, we will have them forcibly removed by the county sheriff." The words felt both terrifying and deeply empowering. Eviction. Sheriff. This was incredibly real. This was the actual mechanism of my freedom. He drafted the legal papers right there in the office, his paralegal flying into immediate action. The formal eviction notice was dispatched with a hired process server that very same afternoon. I gladly paid the extra rush fee to have it served immediately. I pictured the satisfying scene in my head, a stern-looking stranger showing up at the heavy oak door of my beautiful house and handing them the crisp, cold legal documents demanding they leave my property. Their reaction was immediate and absolutely nuclear. My phone, which had been blissfully quiet since I had blocked their primary numbers, started vibrating violently with notifications from unknown numbers and newly created email addresses. They had resorted to new, desperate tactics to bypass my digital blocks. The emails were a relentless torrent of rage and sheer delusion. From Warren, using a brand new electronic mail account, an eviction notice? After everything I have given to this family? After all the support I have given your career? You will be hearing from my lawyer. You cannot just throw me out on the street. I have rights. From Nadine, from an equally new account, you are a cold, heartless monster. I am your sister. I have rights as a legal resident. I am not going anywhere. This is my home too now. I did not respond to a single one. I simply forwarded every single message to Mr. Desmond with the simple note attached, "For your files." He replied almost instantly. "Excellent. Every message is another nail in their legal coffin. Keep documenting everything." The battle lines had been clearly drawn. They honestly thought they could bully me, that they could intimidate me into backing down with loud, empty threats. They had completely forgotten who they were dealing with. They had forgotten that I was the one who built the financial empire they were currently so comfortably squatting in. And I was about to remind them of that fact with the full, crushing force of the law behind me. I knew it was coming. I had been dreading it more than the initial confrontation with Warren and Nadine, more than the intimidating meeting with the shark lawyer. The phone call. It finally came on a quiet Saturday morning, exactly 1 week after I had left my home. I was sitting at Maxine's kitchen table, sketching architectural designs for a new commercial project on a large notepad, desperately trying to find some semblance of normalcy in the meticulous, ordered world of straight lines and perfect angles. The phone rang, and the caller identification screen showed a number I knew as well as my own. Mom. My hand hovered over the glowing phone. A small part of me, the wounded child part that still craved maternal comfort, wanted to just let it ring, to retreat back into the safe, quiet cocoon of silence I was building around my shattered heart. But the architect in me, the professional part that confronts massive problems head-on, knew I could not hide forever. I had to face this. I took a deep, fortifying breath, bracing myself, and answered. Hello, Mom. Vera, thank God. Her voice was frantic, breathless with a manufactured, breathless drama I knew all too well. I have been calling and calling. Nadine finally told me what happened. She said you had some sort of severe mental breakdown, some horrible misunderstanding, and you completely lost your mind and kicked them out of the house. A breakdown. A misunderstanding. That was the twisted story they were spinning to the family. Of course, it painted me as the unstable, crazy older sister, and them as the innocent, confused victims. It was masterful in its sheer cruelty. That is not what happened, Mom, I said, my voice incredibly tired, utterly devoid of the energy needed for this ridiculous fight. Vera, how could you do this? She barreled on, clearly not listening to a word I said. Her words were a heavy tidal wave of misplaced guilt. He is your husband for 25 years. And Nadine, my God, Vera, she is your sister, your baby sister. She called me sobbing hysterically. She said she has nowhere to go. You cannot just throw your own flesh and blood sister out on the street. The blatant injustice of it all was like a physical blow to the stomach. The fact that her very first concern was for the perpetrators, and not for the victim whose life had just been destroyed. Mom, I said, my voice getting significantly colder, the temperature dropping in the sunny kitchen. Did they happen to tell you why I left? Did they tell you that I found them together? That they have been having a full-blown sexual affair for months behind my back, right inside my own house, spending my hard-earned money? There was a pause, a short, incredibly telling silence on the line. I could hear her taking a long, shaky breath. Well, she finally said, her voice softer now, but still laced with thick reproach. Nadine said it was a mistake. A terrible, terrible mistake. She feels absolutely awful about it. People make mistakes, Vera. Good people make mistakes. Family is supposed to forgive. You cannot just throw away a 25-year marriage and your relationship with your sister over one single mistake. One mistake, I repeated, my voice dropping to a dangerously quiet whisper. Mom, it was not one mistake. It was hundreds of deliberate mistakes. Hundreds of lies told directly to my face every single day. And when I confronted them with the evidence, they laughed in my face. They stood right there in my custom kitchen and they laughed at my pain. Nadine is very fragile right now, my mother continued, her voice taking on a whiny, pleading tone that I absolutely despised. She has always looked up to you. And Warren is your husband. For better or for worse, remember your vows. You owe it to your family, to your father's memory, to try and work this out. That was the exact word that did it. Oh. I owe them? I said, my voice now sounding like cracking ice. I owe them absolutely nothing. I have given them everything for years. I paid for Nadine's expensive graduate school application fees. I gave Warren a massive, no-interest loan to start his failed consulting business. I just unknowingly paid for their secret romantic vacation to Florida. What I owe is to myself. I owe it to myself to not be a pathetic doormat, to not be a blind fool, and to not allow my home to be used as a brothel for my husband and my sister. They have 30 days to find a new place to live. That is far more generosity than they deserve. I could hear her starting to cry on the other end of the line. The wet, gulping sobs of someone who is used to using tears to get their way. You are tearing this family apart, Vera. You are being so incredibly selfish. No, Mom, I said, the very last tiny bit of hope I had for her maternal support, for her motherly protection, permanently dying in my heart. I am not tearing it apart. They already did that. I am just cleaning up the disgusting mess they left behind. I ended the call and placed the phone gently on the table. I sat there in the silence of Maxine's bright kitchen, the notepad with my beautiful, orderly architectural designs mocking me from the table. I realized then, with a profound and painful clarity, that I had not just lost a husband and a sister that night. In a very real way, I had lost my mother, too. Her loyalty, I now clearly saw, was not to her actual children, but to the fragile, idealized image of a perfect family she desperately wanted to project to the outside world. And I had just smashed that fake image to pieces. I was truly, completely on my own. The next 2 weeks were a strange, surreal limbo. I lived at Maxine's place, working remotely on my laptop and trying to create a brand new daily routine. Maxine was an absolute saint, giving me quiet space when I needed it and forcing me to eat real food when I forgot. The days were a busy blur of legal emails with Desmond, work conference calls, and long, aimless walks through unfamiliar neighborhoods. The nights were always the hardest, filled with a suffocating, heavy loneliness. Meanwhile, Warren and Nadine's desperation campaign rapidly escalated. Having completely failed to break my resolve with emotional blackmail from my mother, they resorted to a campaign of petty, infuriating harassment. It started with the finances, of course. I received another urgent fraud alert, this time from my main brokerage account. Someone had tried to log in and initiate a massive wire transfer. Thank God the strict security protocols I had put in place with my financial advisor held strong, and the attempt was immediately blocked. I knew it was Warren. He was testing the digital fences, desperately looking for a weak spot. Then came the social media smear campaign. Nadine, who had always been deeply obsessed with her online image and how many people liked her posts, posted a long, rambling, tear-stained story on her Facebook page. She was clever about it. She did not mention the affair, of course. She painted a dramatic picture of a deeply concerned, heartbroken younger sister, worried sick about her older sibling's sudden and alarming mental instability. She publicly claimed I had become paranoid and delusional, that I was under extreme stress from my demanding job, and that I had violently thrown them out into the cold streets based on a terrible, crazy misunderstanding. She ended the ridiculous post with a plea for all her friends and our extended family to pray for me and my mental healing. It was an absolute masterpiece of passive-aggressive victimhood. My phone started buzzing constantly with messages from distant relatives, like Aunt Susan and Cousin Martha, and old family friends, all expressing their deep concern. Is everything okay, Vera? Heard you are going through a really tough time. Nadine is so worried about you. I do not usually engage in childish social media drama. It is undignified. But this was a highly calculated, public attack on my sanity and my professional reputation. It required a swift response. I did not write a long, emotional post defending myself. I did not get into a messy war of words. I simply went directly to her public post, clicked the reply box, and left a single, devastating public comment. I typed carefully, ask her about the romantic business conference at the St. Regis Hotel in Florida last month. Then ask her who paid for it. I have the credit card receipts charged to my personal account. It seems these so-called misunderstandings are quite expensive these days. The comment section immediately exploded. People started asking questions. Relatives were demanding answers. Within an hour, Nadine's entire dramatic post and all the hundreds of comments had been frantically deleted. But they were still not done. The pettiness escalated into the downright bizarre. My weekly expensive grocery delivery from the fresh market was mysteriously cancelled. My digital subscription to the New York Times was abruptly suspended for non-payment, even though I knew it was firmly on auto-pay. One evening, a delivery driver showed up at Maxine's front door with 15 large pepperoni pizzas, all ordered under my name, demanding payment. It was small, incredibly childish things designed solely to disrupt my daily life and get under my skin. Maxine ended up paying the confused delivery guy a large tip out of pity, and we sat on her living room floor eating pizza and actually laughing at how pathetic they had become. Each time they tried something, I calmly fixed the issue. I called the credit card company and formally disputed the fraudulent charge for the pizzas. I reinstated my reading subscriptions with brand new, secure payment information. And most importantly, I documented every single thing. Every cancelled subscription, every fraudulent pizza order, every manipulative social media post screenshot. I created a specific folder in my email and sent a detailed summary to Mr. Desmond every single evening. His replies were always brief and highly encouraging. "This is excellent work, Vera," he wrote. "They are completely building our legal case for us." They honestly thought they were harassing me into submission, wearing me down. What they were actually doing was methodically documenting their own instability and deep malice for the judge to see. They were so completely blinded by their own massive entitlement and rage that they could not see they were not fighting me anymore. They were fighting themselves, and they were losing very, very badly. Each petty act was just another large shovel full of dirt thrown on their own graves. The ongoing harassment was a constant, low-level hum of stress playing in the background of my life. I was slowly becoming numb to it, learning to treat it as a basic logistical problem to be quickly solved rather than a painful emotional assault. I was focusing entirely on my own path forward. I spent my days at Maxine's, working remotely, successfully managing my team at the firm, and starting the painful but absolutely necessary process of untangling my long life. I was also actively looking at new apartments online, scrolling through endless listings for smaller, brighter places just for me. The terrifying thought of starting completely over at 52 was daunting, but with each passing day, it also felt more and more like a necessary, exhilarating liberation. Then they crossed a line. A bright red, irrevocable line from which there was absolutely no coming back. It happened on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. I was in the middle of a major conference call for work, discussing blueprints with an important client, when an urgent email popped up on my laptop screen. It was from my primary bank, the major institution that held my home mortgage and my main checking account. The subject line looked completely innocuous at first glance. "An update on your recent application." I frowned, muting my microphone. I had not applied for anything. I clicked and opened the email. It was a standard, automated congratulatory message. "Congratulations on your new auto loan," it said cheerfully. I stared at the bright screen, my blood instantly turning to ice water in my veins. The voices of the contractors on my conference call faded into a distant, meaningless buzz. I had not applied for any auto loan. My hands trembling violently, I clicked the secure link in the email. It took me directly to a digital loan document. There it was, displayed in stark black and white. An official application for an $82,000 loan for a brand new Lexus sport utility vehicle, the exact same luxury model Warren had been endlessly complaining he wanted for months. It had been submitted online. It used my full legal name, my home address, my date of birth, and my highly sensitive social security number. And because I had spent decades building an excellent credit score, it had been instantly approved. I felt like I was going to be violently sick right there at the kitchen table. This was not petty revenge anymore. This was not childish harassment. This was a serious felony. This was highly calculated, criminal identity theft. They were deliberately trying to saddle me with crippling financial debt to permanently ruin the financial stability I had worked my entire adult life to build. I abruptly excused myself from the important conference call, my voice a strained, tight whisper. I immediately picked up my phone and called the bank's emergency fraud department. The woman on the other end of the line, a remarkably calm professional named Linda, listened patiently as I frantically explained the terrifying situation, my voice shaking with a potent mixture of rage and genuine fear. "Yes, ma'am. I see the approved application right here," she said after a few agonizing moments of typing on her keyboard. "It was submitted early this morning from an internet address directly linked to your home wireless network in Northwood." Of course it was. They had boldly used my own internet service, the one I personally paid for every month, to commit a federal crime against me while sitting in my living room. The sheer, breathtaking audacity was simply unbelievable. Linda immediately froze the fraudulent loan, locking the account, and opened a high-priority internal investigation. But I knew I could not just stop there. This was no longer just a messy, painful divorce. This had rapidly escalated into something far more dangerous. If you've made it this far, please do me a favor, like the video and comment number 1 down below. It lets me know how awesome you are and shows that you're right here with me on this journey. Your support is a massive encouragement and truly motivates me. Drop that one so I can recognize you, and now, let's get back to my story. With a heavy heart and a profound sense of grim finality, I did something I never, in my wildest nightmares, thought I would ever have to do. I picked up the phone, dialed the local police department, and asked to formally file a report for felony identity theft and attempted grand larceny against my husband Warren and my sister Nadine. I had to drive down to the local precinct in person. The building smelled of stale coffee and floor wax. I sat in a sterile, incredibly uncomfortable plastic chair under harsh, flickering fluorescent lights and recounted the entire sordid story to a tired-looking detective named Miller. I had to give him my social security number, my date of birth, all the intimate, private details of my life that those two had stolen and twisted for their own selfish gain. I showed him the printed emails. I showed him the legal eviction notice. I showed him the fraudulent $82,000 loan application. Detective Miller was surprisingly kind, his dark eyes full of a weary, knowing sympathy. "Ma'am," he said when I was finally done speaking, leaning back in his squeaky leather chair. "You did the exact right thing coming to us. We see this kind of horrific thing, coercive control, severe financial abuse, far more often than you would think in contentious separations. They have handed us a very clear, undeniable motive and a massive digital trail to easily follow. We will open a full criminal investigation immediately." When I finally walked out of the police station and into the late afternoon sun, I did not feel triumphant or happy. I just felt incredibly empty and profoundly sad. They had been so entirely consumed by their own greed and their pathological desire to hurt me that they had been willing to risk their own freedom. They had forced my hand, and now the severe consequences would be completely out of my control. The private family drama had now officially become a serious police matter, and I knew with a chilling certainty that this was the definitive beginning of the end. The final days leading up to the 30-day eviction deadline were filled with a tense, incredibly ominous silence. The harassing emails abruptly stopped. The unknown number stopped calling my phone. It was the classic calm before the storm, a dead, heavy quiet that was somehow more unsettling than their loud noise had been. I spent the time in a frantic flurry of activity, successfully finalizing the lease on a gorgeous new apartment downtown and arranging for professional movers, desperately trying to focus on my future instead of the impending, ugly confrontation. The 30th day finally arrived. It was a gray, overcast Friday morning, the dark sky threatening a heavy rain. Mr. Desmond had arranged for me to meet him directly at the house at 10 o'clock sharp to formally retake legal possession of the property. He had been incredibly adamant on the phone. "Do not go alone, Vera. I will be there, and I have already coordinated with the local sheriff's department. 2 armed deputies will strictly meet us there to perform a civil standby. When I slowly pulled up to my own familiar street, a quiet street I had lived on comfortably for 15 years, my heart was pounding a frantic, painful rhythm against my ribs. I saw Mr. Desmond's sleek black Mercedes parked neatly behind two official-looking sheriff's department vehicles. He was waiting for me on the sidewalk, his face grim, a heavy leather briefcase clutched in his hand. "They are still inside," he said quietly as I walked up to join him. "They flatly refused to answer the front door for the deputies." My stomach turned violently with a potent mixture of fear and deep anger. I had foolishly hoped that they would just be gone, that they would have quietly packed their things and slunk away in the middle of the night, leaving me to peacefully pick up the pieces of my life. Of course, they would not make it that easy. The two uniformed sheriff's deputies were highly professional and very firm. They were large, imposing men, and their strong presence was both intimidating and deeply reassuring to me. The senior deputy stepped up to the porch and knocked on the heavy oak front door one last time, his knuckles making a loud, authoritative sound. "Sheriff's Department. Open the door immediately." Silence. "All right," he said, turning to his silent partner. He used a specialized tool to expertly bypass the front lock, and the heavy door swung open with a soft click. "Ma'am, Mr. Desmond, please stay behind us." We stepped inside the entryway. The horrific stench hit me first. It was a vile, stomach-churning combination of stale cigarette smoke, rotting garbage, and cheap, overpowering air freshener. The house, my beautiful, once immaculate house, was completely destroyed. The pristine, reclaimed oak floors were deeply scuffed and covered in dark stains. Garbage was literally everywhere. Greasy pizza boxes, empty cheap wine bottles, and overflowing plastic trash bags were piled high in the corners of the rooms. My beautiful, custom silk curtains had been violently torn right down from the metal rods. The plush gray sectional couch in the living room had a long, deliberate, jagged slash right across the seat cushions, its white synthetic stuffing spilling out onto the floor like intestines. The framed photos on the stone mantelpiece had been intentionally shattered, the broken glass crunching loudly under our shoes as we walked. My entire life, captured in silver frames, smashed to bits. And on the living room wall, written right above the fireplace, scrawled in what looked like bright red lipstick, were the hateful words, "Money-loving witch." I felt a sudden wave of extreme dizziness and had to lean heavily against the wooden doorframe just for physical support. This was not just a messy house. This was pure malice. This was a deliberate, hateful act of pure desecration. The deputies found them hiding in the master bedroom, sitting together on the edge of the bare mattress, which was also disgustingly stained. They were surrounded by a few hastily packed duffel bags. They looked absolutely pathetic, completely defeated. Their beautiful, expensive clothes were rumpled, their faces pale, unwashed, and drawn. The smug arrogance they had displayed on that first night was totally gone, replaced by a sullen, childish resentment. "You need to vacate the premises immediately," the senior deputy said, his deep voice booming in the trashed bedroom. Warren just stared blankly at the floor, absolutely refusing to look at me. But Nadine, my own sister, looked up, her bloodshot eyes filled with a venomous, unadulterated hatred. "I hope you are happy, Vera," she spat, her voice cracking with emotion. "You have destroyed everything." "I did not destroy anything, Nadine," I said, my voice shaking slightly but ringing clear in the silent room. "I just turned on the lights." Just as the deputies were grabbing their arms, preparing to forcefully escort them out, there was a loud knock on the open front door. Two new figures appeared in the hallway. They were dressed in plain clothes, a man and a woman, and they held up shiny metal badges and leather wallets. "Detectives," the man said, his sharp eyes scanning the ruined room. "We are here to speak with Warren and Nadine." A brand new kind of fear, cold and sharp and utterly different from the fear of simply being evicted, flashed across Warren's and Nadine's faces. This was clearly not about the house anymore. The lead detective, who I instantly recognized as Detective Miller from the precinct, turned his gaze to them. "We have a signed warrant to search the premises and seize any and all electronic devices," he stated. This is in relation to an ongoing criminal investigation into felony identity theft and bank fraud. Nadine immediately started to cry, a high, wailing, theatrical sound that echoed through the house. Warren just physically sagged, as if all the bones had been magically removed from his body. He suddenly looked 20 years older. The detectives calmly read them their Miranda rights. "You have the right to remain silent." The familiar words from 1,000 television shows were now a chilling, absolute reality happening right in my own bedroom. They roughly pulled their arms behind their backs and placed my cheating husband and my betraying sister in heavy steel handcuffs. As they were led out of the house in shame, walking past the terrible wreckage of the life we had once shared, Warren finally lifted his head and looked at me. There was absolutely no anger left in his eyes, just a hollow, empty, terrifying despair. He knew it was over. All of it. I stood there in the middle of my ruined home and watched through the window as they were placed into the back of separate, unmarked police cars. I did not feel happy. I did not feel victorious. I just felt an overwhelming, profound sense of quiet, blessed relief. The terrible storm had finally passed. The house was a complete wreck, but it was my wreck. And it was finally, wonderfully quiet. The months that followed that day were a painful, highly methodical process of cleaning up the debris of my life. There was the massive physical cleanup, which required hiring a professional crew who specialized in biohazards and severe property damage. It took them weeks to restore the floors and walls. There was the exhausting legal cleanup, which involved endless, draining meetings with Mr. Desmond, insurance adjusters, and the district attorney's office. And then, of course, there was the deep emotional cleanup, the absolute hardest part of all, which is honestly still ongoing today. The legal criminal case against them was an absolute slam dunk. The detectives quickly found the fraudulent auto loan applications and a host of other highly incriminating digital evidence right on Warren's laptop, which had been securely seized from my bedroom. Faced with irrefutable, undeniable digital evidence, both he and Nadine were forced to take a plea deal to avoid a much longer, far more public, and embarrassing trial. They managed to avoid actual prison time, a fact that initially angered me greatly. But Mr. Desmond wisely helped me see it differently. A full trial would have been a humiliating public circus, Vera, he had said, pouring me a glass of water in his office. This way is cleaner, and the long-term consequences are still incredibly severe. He was absolutely right. They were each formally sentenced to 5 years of strict probation, legally ordered to pay massive financial restitution for the extensive damages to my house, and had to complete 500 grueling hours of mandatory community service. They both now carried permanent felony criminal records. Their professional careers and personal lives were in absolute ruins. Warren was immediately fired from his corporate job the moment the arrest hit the public record. Nadine's professional nursing license was immediately put under strict review by the state medical board, effectively ending her career. They had become complete pariahs in our community. The divorce was finalized quickly and relatively quietly. Thanks to their documented criminal actions and the literal mountain of hard evidence proving adultery and severe financial abuse, Warren got absolutely nothing from me. The house, the savings accounts, the investments, my retirement funds, my pension, they were all heavily protected as my personal premarital assets and my individual earnings. He walked away from the courtroom with nothing but his clothes, his massive new debt, and his shiny new criminal record. Last I heard from a gossiping mutual acquaintance, he was living in a cheap, run-down rental apartment across town, working a miserable, low-level retail sales job selling office supplies to make ends meet. Nadine's ultimate fate was, in some ways, even sadder. Our mother, finally forced to confront the ugly, undeniable, documented truth of the situation, was utterly devastated. She desperately tried to support Nadine at first, but their relationship, which was already strained, permanently fractured under the crushing weight of the public shame and deep disappointment. Nadine lost most of her friends, who were universally horrified by what she had done to her own sister. She eventually packed up and moved 2 states away to live in a spare room with an aunt, desperately trying to escape her completely ruined reputation. We have not spoken a single word to each other since the exact day she was arrested in my bedroom. Sometimes, in weak moments, I wonder if I will ever hear from her again. As for me, I quickly realized I could not bear to stay in that house. I could not sleep in that bedroom or cook in that kitchen. It was permanently tainted with far too many bad memories, deeply stained by their horrible betrayal. I paid the professional crew to painstakingly restore it to its former pristine beauty. Every single wall was repainted, every oak floor perfectly refinished. And then, without shedding a single tear, I put it right on the real estate market. It sold in less than a week for above asking price. I took the substantial proceeds and bought a small, incredibly sunny, two-bedroom apartment in a beautiful, modern high-rise building right in the center of the city. It has a gorgeous balcony that overlooks the Green Park, and it is entirely, wonderfully all mine. The day I finally moved in, carrying a single cardboard box of my most treasured, personal belongings, I felt a deep sense of profound peace I had not felt in years. I spent weeks happily decorating it, not with expensive things designed to impress others, but with simple things that made me genuinely happy. I bought a ridiculously comfortable, overstuffed velvet armchair. I started a small indoor herb garden by the window. I even enrolled in a local pottery class, something I had always wanted to do but never had the time for. My first few clay creations were horribly lopsided and undeniably ugly. But the physical feeling of the cool, wet, white clay spinning fast in my hands, of actively creating something brand new from a raw lump of earth, felt like an incredibly powerful metaphor for my own life. One day, I was finally cleaning out the very last few boxes from the big move, and I found them tucked away in the dusty back of the storage unit. The expensive, hand-stitched Italian leather suitcases I had proudly bought for Warren all those years ago for our anniversary. The exact ones I had used to pack my things on that terrible, life-altering night. I stood there in the dim light for a very long time, just looking at them. These heavy leather symbols of a life and a love that had been nothing but a complete lie. I did not hesitate. I grabbed them by the handles, dragged them all the way down to the building's large metal dumpster, and threw them in, one right after the other. They made a heavy, incredibly satisfying thud as they hit the metal bottom. The very next day, I went out to the store and bought myself a brand new set of luggage. It was beautifully lightweight, highly durable, and a bright, vibrant shade of sapphire blue. It was mine. My life is much smaller now, and much, much quieter. But it is real. It is honest, and it is entirely my own. Last week I excitedly booked a trip, a solo trip just for myself, 2 full weeks on the sunny coast of Spain, something I have always dreamed of doing. I am going to eat delicious tapas, drink amazing wine, and sit alone on the warm beach and read good books. Sometimes, late at night when the busy city outside my window is finally quiet, I still hear their cruel laughter echoing in my mind. I still clearly remember Warren's smug, taunting question, "What are you going to do? Divorce me?" He thought it was a powerful threat. He honestly thought it was the absolute worst thing that could possibly happen to me. He had absolutely no idea it would actually be the beautiful beginning of my salvation. He had no idea that I would do exactly that, and so much more. I would not only divorce him, I would completely dismantle the comfortable life he took for granted. I would hold him and my own sister legally accountable for their crimes. And I would proudly build a brand new life right from the ashes, a life of my own making, carefully chosen one piece at a time. And that is my story. It was undoubtedly the hardest, most incredibly painful thing I have ever been through in my entire life. But I survived, and I came out the other side stronger. If you have ever felt deeply betrayed, if you have ever been made to feel incredibly small or foolish by the people who were supposed to love you, I truly hope hearing this lets you know that you are not alone. And I hope you realize that you are so much stronger than you think you are. Thank you so much for listening.